So just as soon as Donnie Nietes has gained the IBF title at flyweight, it appears as though he has now vacated it, and it looks like the vacant version of the title is going to be fought between former IBF champion Moruti Mthalane and current top contender, probably the best contender without a belt, or the best fighter without a belt, rather, which would make him the best contender at flyweight, Muhammad Waseem, a fighter originally from Pakistan who is promoted out of South Korea, but trains under Jeff Mayweather out of the Mayweather gym in Las Vegas. Pretty interesting, turn of events and backstory there, but I won't necessarily get into that. But this is a really good fight, and interestingly enough, it's going to be taking place as the co-feature on the undercard of the Lucas Matthysse versus Manny Pacquiao WBA welterweight clash in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, on July 15th, Sunday, July 15th. And this is a really good fight. Really good fight. Moruti Mthalane had been, like I said, the IBF champion before. He had originally fought to try and become the IBF champion against the then champion Nonito Donaire way back in 2008. He wound up actually getting stopped in the 6th round. If I remember right, I think it was on cuts, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I've seen that fight, though. But then he was able to win the vacant title after Donaire had moved up in weight and vacated it. He defeated another champion in his own right, Julio Cesar Miranda, made his first defense in a 5th round stoppage of Zlani Tete, and then made his second defense in a 5th round stoppage of John Rio Casimero, two future world champions in a row. Tete would go on to eventually become a super flyweight and now a current bantamweight champion, and Casimero would eventually, more recently, the last couple of years, become an IBF flyweight champion when he was able to knock out I'm Not Run Wrong in an avenge of his defeat. Funny enough, I'm Not Run Wrong was actually the mandatory for Moruti Mthalane back when Mthalane dropped the belt. I don't know I can't remember necessarily off the top of my head if it was just an outright duck of Amnat, and they didn't want to fight him. But interestingly enough, he wound up dropping the IBF belt, and he fought for the IBO flyweight title and fought against Jeter Oliva in order to win that. And then he made a couple of defenses against relatively middling opposition, guys that simply weren't as good as the guys he initially fought. Miranda, Tete, Casimero, and of course Donaire. Some of the better, truly top level fighters of the flyweight area of the time. But it looks like he's finally managed to start stepping back up. He has officially dropped the IPO title. I mean, I don't know why, if there's a specific reason why he had to drop that in order to get this fight. But he decided to go after this belt once Nietes has now moved up out of the division. Nietes, I'm going to make another video about him in particular, because he's definitely daring to be great, trying to become a full weight champion. And even at an advanced stage, actually moving up in weight, interestingly enough. Although, he's a guy that I think drained quite a bit in order to make the lighter weights throughout much of his career anyway. But here, Mthalane against Muhammad Waseem. There's a very big difference in experience between the two of them. Mthalane, not unlike Nietes, is actually 35 years old, 35-2 with 24 knockouts. Muhammad Waseem is 8-0 with 6 knockouts. He's a relatively new kid on the block. He's a newbie in the sport too, or in professional boxing at the very least. Pretty accomplished amateur, however. Won a couple of good medals. I'm not sure if he won the gold off the top of my head, but I know he at least won a silver in one of the World Games. But he's had a few fights, between flyweight and bantamweight. But it appears to me as though that flyweight and or super flyweight would probably be are truly his natural weight class, and he's definitely settling in at flyweight in order to challenge for a world title now here. Interestingly enough, he actually loomed as the mandatory potentially for Daigo Higa. Daigo Higa is actually going to be fighting this weekend against Christopher Rosales, probably best known for being Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez's cousin, but also a very tough young contender in his own right. But Waseem isn't necessarily a spring chicken. He's a guy that stayed in the amateurs for a very long time, representing Pakistan, and turned pro relatively late. He's 30 years old now. Turned pro back in 2015, and he didn't waste very much time as a professional. Immediately started fighting guys with winning records. Became the silver champion at flyweight in only his fourth bout when he defeated the aforementioned Jethro Oliva. And the two of them, I think match up really well in just in boxing skills. Mthalane has more pro experience, but I think that that's somewhat tempered by Waseem's pretty extensive amateur experience. It's a good fight though. Mthalane has a good jab, sets everything up pretty much behind the jab. Waseem has more of a quick jab. Mthalane's, I'd say, is more of like a very pronounced one. Like he kind of really hammers the jab through, like up the middle, to try and set up his power shots behind it. Whereas Waseem tends to really I don't want to necessarily say flick it, but like he snaps it out there. So it's almost more of like a hard slap as opposed to like a thudding power shot, the way that Mthalane kind of throws his jab. But he throws more so in combination. He's a guy that I've made the comparison of him before, where I say that Muhammad Waseem, the way that he boxes, is what Amir Khan should have developed into. It's the style that Khan should have developed into, like when he finally learned all the more technical aspects of boxing and integrated that into his natural talent and athleticism with the hand speed, the foot speed, etc. Waseem, like he'll kind of come in like in a little bit of a side-to-side, head moving peekaboo type stance, oftentimes, and that's in spite of the fact that he's relatively tall for the weight, 5'6". Slightly taller than Mthalane. I'm not sure if he has a longer reach than Mthalane. I'd say that they're probably about equal. Mthalane has pretty long arms, but I wouldn't necessarily say that Waseem is a T-Rex by any means either. But I think this is a really good matchup between these two, and I think the winner is definitely one of the true top fighters at flyweight. Flyweight is one of those divisions that is currently kind of in flux. It seems like it's almost constantly in flux, considering the fact that Gonzalez and Estrada moved up out of the division. Nietes, as soon as he gets into the division, he's moving out of the division. Yoka retired, or is at the very least taking a hiatus from boxing. And then it's anybody's guess as to how long Daigo Higa is going to choose to remain at the weight. And even Kosei Tanaka, too. Tanaka, even though he just arrived at the weight, you could imagine that he would probably do something similar to Nietes, maybe only stay at the weight for a year, if that, considering he's made a lot of big pronouncements about trying to win titles in multiple weight classes and trying to not waste very much time in stamping his name in the history books, and also for the money as well. But I really like this fight. I think it's an excellent addition to Pacquiao versus Matthysse. I think it could be a show stealer. I think that the way that these two guys' styles kind of match up against each other, I think it's going to turn into a really good fight. Just another kind of barn burner type fight. I think their skills are relatively equal. If I had to be pushed to make an outright prediction, as of right now, I would favor Waseem. I do think that he's a bit more so on the upswing as compared to Mthalane. They have an opponent in common in Jethro Oliva, and Waseem completely dominated him, whereas Mthalane had a little bit of issue with him, took him to a split decision. So I do think that Waseem's maybe his youth and experience, as well as the lack of wear and tear on his body as compared to Mthalane, who has fought some pretty tough contenders, and even in the stoppage wins that he got over them, he took a few lumps here and there. I do think that overall Waseem will be able to get a clear but competitive victory over Mthalane. That's just the way that I see it right now. Things could change as the fight kind of gets closer, and if there's any more info that comes out about their camps, maybe one of them is having a worse camp than the other, and that could change how I decide to make my ultimate pick beforehand. But as of right now, I would favor Waseem. But this is a very good fight. Mthalane is one of the top kind of unsung hero type fighters of the lower weight classes. A guy that's actually been very good, but more recently hasn't necessarily been fighting top level competition, and so he's kind of floundered and remained static, and hasn't necessarily excelled and been able to cross over as much as some of the other guys. Not even your necessarily just your Gonzalez's and your Estradas, your Sisakets, but even the likes of like a Ryuichi Taguchi went out unified, and your Kenshiro, who only in a few fights is already going for the gusto, already one of the top fighters at light flyweight, so on and so forth. But that's going to do it for this video, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.